Welcome to our podcast, Raising Bigs. This podcast is an ongoing conversation between myself and my young adult son. We're ready and willing to talk about all the things parents and their kids, from young teens to 20 somethings, might experience in their lives and relationships, the good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly. In this episode, number 5, we're continuing with the topic of striving for health and how that can look different for parents and their adult children. I'm Marci, I'm the mom.
I'm Cade, and I'm her kid. The topic of health is something that both young adults and parents can both benefit from when we're talking about it openly and honestly. Last week, if you missed episode 4, go back and watch it. But last week, I talked about my ongoing health journey and how I've navigated that and how I've worked with my parents to go through that. And now we're going to talk about your health journey, Mom. We are definitely not health experts by any means. We're simply just here to share our experiences and talk about what has and hasn't worked for us. The definition of health for everyone is different and it changes over time as we learn things, learn new experiences, maybe go through different health problems. And not everyone agrees on what health is and how to seek it. But I think that it's important that we just find that out for ourselves. And it's perfectly fine that not everyone agrees on it. But yeah, like I said, Mom, it's your turn this week. So why don't we start with why it's important and why you think it's important for kids and their parents to talk openly about their parents' health?
For sure. Well, our family has navigated a variety of health concerns over the years, and it's affected each of us differently. It's important to talk about how we have felt and how each of those events has kind of changed who we are and our approach. It's also essential for each of us to know that we have our family's full support as we move forward. And we'll talk about why that's so important here in a little bit. We are doing life as a family, and that obviously includes health, especially when you're living in the same household, but also when your adult children are living away. They like to be kept in the loop, and parents obviously like to be kept in the loop for the most part. So the health is probably near the top of our list as a family. The list of important things comes right after unconditional love, of course, for us. So as adult kids take that responsibility over their own health, they need to know their family medical history. That info is going to come from the parents. And so really important that as parents, you know the info to share with them. But when they go to the doctor, one of the first things that the doctor is going to ask them, this is probably a new doctor in a new city, and they're going to have to fill out forms. And if you haven't been open with them, they don't know how to answer the questions. So it's important data that they can share with all those medical professionals, and then also that they can use to make smart lifestyle choices. So if your kid knows that there's a family history of cancer, diabetes, cardiac issues, obesity, addiction, etc., like the list goes on, right? Then they can actively choose to do things that can lower their risks. They can also seek out knowledge so that they know what to watch out for. So, Cade, we've been very open with you about your family history as it pertains to health. Well, all things really, but we're talking about health today. So, how would you say knowing that information has changed a choice that you've made for yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, you guys have been very open about my family health history, and it's definitely helped me make choices. For example, I know that cardiac issues run in our family. So, that's something that I take into consideration when I maybe go to drink an energy drink, or if I'm feeling like my chest is maybe starting to hurt after a run or something like that. I think having that history definitely helps. Like you said, being able to go to the doctor and say, "Hey, I have, a history of cardiac issues, or I have a history of, or in my family have a history of those things." It can really help out your health and help your doctors be able to find, maybe different problems that they might have not caught originally. So I think that that is something that's been helpful. I also know that we have a history of addiction in my family. So again, that's another conscious thing that I watch out for and make sure, even if it's not drugs or alcohol or anything that dramatic, it's easy to get addicted to eating certain foods or getting addicted to sitting in front of your phone all day or playing video games or whatever the situation is. So I think that having that family history has helped me to make decisions. And sometimes I have the family history and still choose to make maybe not so good decisions. I still drink energy drinks. I still do all of that stuff. I still eat a cheeseburger, even though, maybe I know I shouldn't be eating them that often. But I think having that history and knowing that definitely helps for sure. And I mean, Mom, for you, the past couple of years have been a little challenging for you health wise, just with different things cropping up. And the fact that you've included me and my siblings, your kids in that journey, I feel like it's really helped me to understand the importance of health and just, how much goes into health, whether it's financial burdens or stress or doctor's appointments or everything like that. I think that you just being open with your health journey has really helped me a lot. And it makes me feel like I'm able to support you a little bit better. It, being included in your not necessarily every single detail, but being able to get a summary of what's going on with you and to better understand that, I feel like helps me better be there better for you as a son. So like I said, over the past couple of years, it has been a little challenging for you. What is it like been like, opening up that journey for your kids and us being there for you and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so from my viewpoint, it has been amazing to be able to include you guys. It's really hard for me to express how much it means to me that you and your siblings have my back, especially if a scary diagnosis pops up out of nowhere. We unfortunately had that experience within the last couple of years. And when I was diagnosed with epilepsy, I had unwavering support from the kids, a lot of understanding for what I could and couldn't do. They wanted to know how they could help me, what they needed to be watching for, and then encouragement, which I needed a lot of at that time. So that from all of you guys and then from our extended family and my friends, like really got me through that time, which was really scary. So you helped me laugh when I didn't necessarily feel like laughing, but also put things in perspective. So it was much easier to go through because I felt like you guys actually got it. So I can't imagine if I had withheld information from you guys or withheld what I was experiencing, I would have been the one that really missed out on
Mhm.
having that support. I think it's important that kids know what's going on and are, included to the extent that you can handle it. I mean, how did that make you feel to be included throughout that whole diagnostic process?
For sure. Like I said, it made me feel like I was able to be there for you, in a better way than just if I hadn't known what's going on. Kind of like you had mentioned earlier, there has been things that I've had to help out with, whether it's driving you to your appointments since you can't drive or doing extra things around the house or whatever. I think having that understanding of knowing what's going on with you has definitely been helpful for me. And I think that it's great that when a parent needs help, if their young adult kids can pitch in and provide that, I think that that's great. That's been something that I have almost kind of found a little bit of pride in is being able to help you. Obviously, growing up, you did a lot, a lot for us. Um, so I think being able to kind of pay you back for that has been very great. And in what other ways do you think that it would be helpful for kids to know parent details about their parents' health? And then also kind of what maybe is there certain things that you shouldn't share or anything like that?
Yeah. So again, I kind of said to the extent that they can handle it, right? So if we're talking about a 16 or 17-year-old, there may be things that you might tell them, but then you're not relying on them for other things. As your kids get older, you might be able to rely on them for other pieces of information. But withholding, a diagnosis or not cluing them in on what's going on, I fully understand that sometimes parents won't share as things are unfolding and happening because they don't want to worry their child. But then when it gets to the point of knowing what's going on, I think it can be really valuable for kids to know that. They also
For
learn
sure.
kids learn about a lot about themselves through dealing with watching their parent or helping their parent or standing beside their parent dealing with a health issue. And it doesn't need to wait until your parent is in their 80s or 90s and on their deathbed for all of a sudden that responsibility, for lack of a better word, of being a partner in healthcare, which is what your child can be for you if you allow that. I know Kate has had to take me to a lot of appointments. And even when I'm like weighing different treatments or things like that for epilepsy, or I've got frozen shoulder going on right now, he's been very helpful just helping me to kind of walk through things. Now, I try to make sure that my health is not all we talk about because that can be exhausting, right? And the kids have helped me remember that in doing this as a family, epilepsy is only part of who I am. It's not all of who I am, and how I choose to live with it, is a choice. And so all those rides that Kate and Tim had to give me, I've, haven't gotten to drive 18 out of the last 24 months due to seizures. And so thanks for that, Kate, for all the
Hmm.
rides. But it's really been helpful to me to be able to know that I can rely on my kids for some things that I might be needing. And like Kate alluded to, it's helped him to feel a sense of pride in being able to help. So thanks again, Kate, for all those rides.
For sure. And I think, like you said, it's really important to know, whatever, if you have a sickness or a diagnosis or anything like that, or even if you don't have anything, necessarily diagnosed, but you have a cold or something like that, that, knocks you out for a week or so. I think, like you said, it's important to know that that doesn't make who you are. I think all of us kind of make a conscious effort to check in with you and see how you're doing, whether it's epilepsy or frozen shoulder or whatever it may be. But I think we all try to not make it the whole conversation, and still check in with you about other things, and you've still done a great job of going and hanging out with your friends, or doing things that you enjoy doing. I think, like you said, that's really important, and not making it your identity, and not making that the only thing that's going on in your life.
For sure. And I can think of, several other ways that it's been important for you to know details about my health, or ways that it's been beneficial for us. So, like with this frozen shoulder, like, right now, there's some things I can't do on an everyday basis, tasks around the house, anything that's over my head or heavy lifting, those kind of things. And I know that you've gone out of your way to routine do those things for me. So I really appreciate that. And I know, like, this week when my husband, Cade's stepdad, he had a terrible cold, and so we still made sure that the things that he usually does, like getting the garbage taken out and those kind of things, still happened. So that sense of pitching in and being a team, and even if you live in the same town but away, like just stopping over to check on your parents when things like that are going on, even if your parents aren't old yet, it happens at all ages, right? And again, we don't need
Mm.
to wait until they're really old. So you've also been really encouraging to me with this frozen shoulder when I'm struggling with PT. You've spent a lot more time working physically on movement and exercise. And so, you've kind of helped encourage me to get my number of PT sessions in a day. And we've even laughed about like how ridiculous it looks sometimes when I'm attempting to move my arm in a way that doesn't move. But that just makes something that is fairly unpleasant for me, makes it that much easier. So I really like that. And then the inspiration that you've given me with your kind of how you've been so empowered about your own health journey. So that's encouraged me to research this, middle-aged female health challenge that me and every single one of my friends is going through right now, otherwise known as menopause. There's a big movement right now. If you're going through menopause, check it out. And take actions that are going to better my quality of life and help me feel more like myself, and to not accept the status quo if it doesn't work for me. So I know, you've encouraged me and watched me, go to different doctors and get second opinions and say, "Hey, I think we're missing something. Can we go back and try something
Mm.
else?" So a lot of that has been inspired by watching you and how you handle those things going forward. Your generation is very different from mine, and the generation before me was very different. I've had some experience with people of the baby boomer generation where they think the doctors are experts. Like, they really turn over their medical power to the doctors. And so sometimes what that leads to is them not getting results or not getting the answers that they need. And so then you come to my generation where we will ask the questions, and even if we don't get the answer we want, we're still probably going to do what the doctor told us to do, or we're just going to
Mhm.
not do anything, right? Where your generation seems to be one that will come in and say, "You know what? I don't like that answer. We need to find a different way." And so that's been very inspiring for me.
Yeah, and I'm glad you recognize that, because I think that that is something, like you said, between past generations and now that differs. And I think that that honestly kind of spans between past health. I think that that goes into health, that goes into finances, it goes into jobs. I think that that is just kind of a mindset change. But yeah, like you said, I feel like I've been supportive of you of not going with the status quo if that doesn't work for you. If it's a diet that doesn't work for you and doesn't include foods that you don't like, you don't have to follow that. If it's you go to a doctor and they give you a response and they're just like, oh well, I guess you just got to deal with it, knowing that you can go and get a second opinion, and knowing that you can do your own research and figure out what works for you. And you might end up back where the first doctor, with what they said, but at least you still tried and looked into it. And I know I've enjoyed personally sharing with you all the things I've learned, whether it's about movement and exercise or nutrition or whatever it is, and also being able to kind of do research with you and learn with you a lot. Like you said, with this whole menopause thing, um, I've learned a lot that maybe necessarily won't apply to me.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go through menopause at any time or anything like that. But I think that it still, helps. You still learn things that can be translated into my life or people around me or things like that. And obviously, I want you around for a long time. So I think that's definitely a good benefit of it all for sure.
And that's the plan, is to be around for a long time, but I'm not signing up to be miserable for the rest of that time, right? So, and as
Exactly. If
I,
you're going to be here, you want to be healthy and want to be able to
yes,
enjoy life while you're here.
For sure. And as I get older, I'm really happy that we're going to be able to have these candid conversations. Again, it's never going to be our main topic of conversation because that's not who I am. That's not my identity. If you were to get some kind of a diagnosis, that's not who you are. It's not your identity. We can talk about what's going on. We can talk about solutions and things like that, what your needs are, but it's never going to be the main topic of conversations. When I'm 75 years old and you call me, I don't want to be that parent that's telling you, here's my list of symptoms, here's everything, that all the doctor's appointments I've gone to. I want you in the loop, but I want that to be a small piece of the puzzle, right? Because I want us to be able to talk about the fun things, and the fact that maybe I went and hung out on the pool deck of the retirement home in Florida or somewhere warm and sunny, and you can tell me about the crazy things you did with the dogs or the challenges at work, things like that. So
For
again,
sure.
health is just a part, right? But I want us all to be able to be there for each other when life gets challenging. And we can't
Hmm.
support each other effectively if we can't share openly. So, I think really important to keep each other in check and be like, yeah, it really sucks that you have frozen shoulder right now, mom. Like,
Hmm.
and I could get depressed about it and I could crawl in bed and I could just refuse to do anything about it. Or I could have you in my back pocket being like, "How many PT sessions have you done today?" "Okay, let's get my massage gun out and try to do something about that."
Uh-huh.
So I really appreciate that effective support, but you wouldn't be able to do that for me if I wasn't open with you about what's going on.
Exactly. Like you said, you can't you can't help something that you don't know. If I didn't know that, you had to do these 5 PT sessions a day, I wouldn't be pushing for it. Or if I didn't know that, just through talking with you that, using the massage gun on your shoulder helps, I wouldn't, be able to help that and offer that. Or, I know that's hard for you to drive. So when I go run errands, I already, I'll go out of my way to ask if you need me to grab anything while I'm out. So that way, it doesn't have to be an extra trip. So I think, like you said, it's really just about that communication and sharing openly. Otherwise, you can't be there to support each other. And I think that that goes
Mhm.
both ways, no matter who's going through a health problem. And I think, along with that communication, what would you say to parents who maybe aren't open about communication with their health, or even if they just, maybe share bits and pieces, or even parents that are too open with their health and, maybe put it on their kids and make it their problem? Just what would you say about all of that?
Yeah, I'm going to start with your last point first. It is really hard to care more about someone else's health than they do themselves. And so putting your health on your kids as if it's their responsibility to solve it is not a goal of mine. And it's not something, if I were, advising a friend who is having health issues or a family member, like I would definitely not advise that, because your kids deserve to have their life and live their life. That being said, at the end of life, or if you're dealing with some pretty significant health issues, like you might need help, but it may not always be your kids that are
Mhm.
stepping in to do that. So that's the kind of the last point. Like, it is not their problem to solve your health issues. Obviously, if we're talking about an older parent or a parent who's had a catastrophic issue happen and the young adult is having to step in and make medical decisions, or an older adult child is having to step in and make medical
Mhm.
decisions, that's not what we're talking about today. That's a completely separate issue, and we will all get there eventually, right? I
Mhm.
used to have to take care of you 100% of the time, and you're going to have to take care of me as we move forward. But what we're talking about, kind of like this midlife parent, young adult situation, I would definitely say they are old enough to handle it. So be vulnerable with your kids. They need to see you as a human being. It is not your job to be perfect for them, because all that does is set kids up to expect themselves to be perfect.
Mhm.
So they need to be able to see the flaws. They need to know how you're working through them. They need to know if you need help or assistance, that they can be part of the solution. I think it just really can help you to bond and build that relationship. So you're not doing your kids any favors by keeping them in the dark. That causes a lot of doubt. It causes hard feelings. It can cause relationship issues if they feel like you're hiding something from them or there's something you're not telling them. I just really don't feel that it's fair to them and that they
Mhm.
deserve to know what's going on. And it is so much better doing health, and being able to navigate that, because it can be scary if someone you love, they're going through something, but you have no idea what it is. Um, you might see things, pick up on things, and have no context for it. And that can just make it even scarier. than if you actually have the facts and know what's going on. So, that other side of that coin, Cade, what would you say to kids whose parents are not sharing any medical stuff with them? They don't have their family data. They think there might be something going on. How would you suggest they approach that?
For sure. First thing I will say, I feel like it's very important to ask, especially when it comes to, family medical history. Sometimes maybe parents just aren't telling you because they don't think that you care, they don't think you're interested, or it just doesn't seem like it's something that they need to share. So I think, if you're getting to that young adult age where you're, going to the doctor and, maybe nothing's wrong with you right now, but, you just want to be aware of if you have cardiac issues or if you have mental health issues that run in the family or if you have, whatever it is. I think as far as that like medical history goes, it's really important just to ask. And I think that that goes along even with what your parents are going through health wise. You know, there is kind of a boundary of not, pushing too hard and not wanting to get too involved with your parents' health. And, if they're not wanting to share something, respecting that. But I think it also is important to ask, even if it's just, hey mom or hey dad, how are you feeling today? How was your shoulder? How was your doctor's appointment? Whatever the situation is. I think just asking and understanding that they might just say, oh, it was fine, and then they don't want to open up and have a conversation. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think from like a parent's perspective, if I'm coming to you and asking you and I seem interested, that's gonna encourage you to be more vulnerable and be more open versus if I'm just, either not saying anything at all or telling you, oh, you need to tell me what's going on and blah, blah, blah. I think that kind of the smoothest approach for both parties is just kind of to come from a place of curiosity. How was your doctor's appointment? How are you feeling? Is that new diet working for you? Are you, how have your walks been that you've been taking? Or, maybe once your parents get older, have you made any friends at the YMCA when you go and do your water aerobics class or whatever it is? So I think really just asking and being interested and being there to support them no matter how open they're willing to be. I think that's a big point.
Yeah, you bring up boundaries. And, we did talk in the last episode about how parents need to respect a boundary that the young adult may have put up. And, we obviously are talking about our family and what has worked in our family and the way we choose to approach our relationship in hopes that it will inspire you to have similar conversations and share that openness. It works for us, and we see a lot of people in our sphere of influence or in our circle where things aren't working well.
Mhm.
Either, kids aren't sharing, parents aren't sharing. There are kids struggling with mental illness issues that have no support because they don't feel willing to share with their parents. There are parents, dealing with, it could be depression issues, it could be cancer, it could be like a major health issue that's causing a huge financial strain and time strain and causing them to feel terrible. And if they're not
Mhm.
sharing with their kids, that can cause a lot of confusion and hurt feelings. So, but that being said, if just like with the kids, if there's something a kid doesn't want to discuss, like they're under no obligation to share with you every single thing. The same way goes for parents, and the young adults need to respect that as well. Now, obviously, like I mentioned before, you're going to get to the point where a parent can't make decisions for themselves unless your parent
Mhm.
just goes to sleep one night and doesn't wake up and they've been perfectly healthy to that point. But for most people, they end up with some kind of a health issue at the end of life where it might require the kids to step in and might require some decision making that the parent is not able to make. Again, not the time frame we're talking about right now, but this does set the table, right,
Mhm.
for what to expect, down the road. So just respecting those boundaries. If there are things that people are not quite ready to talk about, it might just be a not yet. So it doesn't mean you have to stop asking out of curiosity, again, out of love. But at the end of the day, if you care more about their health than they do, there's not much you can do about
Mhm.
that. And so in my mind, then that absolves you of having to take responsibility for that. It doesn't mean you're going to stop asking. That is still your parent or your child, and you may still want to be asking, in a loving way and checking in with them until they're ready to. But that's why, again, that's with most of our podcasts that you'll see coming out. Like, if you are proactive and you establish this pattern early on with your young adult children, it is likely to continue as you move forward. So,
Mhm.
anything you think we missed, Kate, in this discussion?
I mean, I think just one thing I would add on is just as a child, I think you have to understand that as much as your parents are navigating, maybe a health issue for the first time or just navigating life for the first time, so are you. So, it's a little bit different if let's say I'm a younger kid and I'm having problems with let's say just for example, I'm having mental health problems as a younger kid. You as the parent, you've already lived life. You might have gone through that before. You might have had experience in that. So I think you as a parent can kind of give perspective onto that, whether it's mental health, whether it's weight loss, whether it's eating, whether it's exercise, whether it's allergies, whether, heart problems, whatever it is. I think as a parent, you just have a little bit more life experience and can give that perspective. So I think as a kid, you have to kind of recognize that you don't have that experience. I've never had epilepsy before, just talking about your health earlier. So just as much as you're experiencing it for the first time, so am I. So I think that that's something as a kid that you kind of have to accept and be open to learn, and just be open to it as much as your parents are, if they're willing to share that with you. But I think that's really just the one thing, is knowing that it's hard to watch, even just from my experience, seeing your parent, someone who you love so much, go through a medical thing or whatever it is health wise, and, not having that experience and not having a perspective to give. So I think that it's important to just know that, if you guys are both open to it and both willing to share, that it is a joint journey of you guys just going through it together.
For sure, and it can be a much richer experience, right? Especially when something bad happens. Like, it's easy for us to all focus on all the celebrations and all the happy things, but part of being a family is sharing both sides of the coin. So, and I think as a society, sometimes we don't offer enough support, or we're not open and honest enough with each other. And so I think in order for everybody to feel comfortable talking about what they're going through, we need things like this where people can share. So
For sure.
so that is a wrap for episode 5 of Raising Bigs. Thank you for showing up here today. We hope it makes you think about and take some action on your own health, both adults, young adults, and parents. We also hope you start to share that important information, if you haven't already, and give that support in awesome ways, while honoring those healthy boundaries, right? So those were the key takeaways from today. Again, we're not experts, but we can authentically share what we're learning in hopes of making the path a little bit easier for those of you who are listening. You can find this podcast now that I have wrestled with all the technology and figured it out. It is B plus work. We will continue to make it fancy with intros and outros and music as we go, but this is where we are right now. And we felt it was too important to sit on this energy until it was perfect. So perfect doesn't exist. So you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If there is another platform that you'd like us to get on, please let us know. You can communicate with us. Probably the easiest way is to go to marcihawkinson.com. There's a spot there where you can send an email, or you can find either of us on social media, Cade Berrigan or Marci Hawkinson. You can find us there, and I'm under Life Coach Marci at Facebook and life_coach_Marci on Instagram. Cade, what are your handles?
For sure. Mine is just the Cade Berrigan, all straight across on all social media platforms. No underscores, no periods, nothing. And we'll have those all in the description and everything like that. But yeah, I think that's everything. Tune back in next week for another episode of Raising Bigs.
Bye, everybody.